You know, you're not getting any younger. It's time to have a baby,
Judith declared, treating me like a mere housemaid. Exhausted by her unreasonable demands, I turned to my husband for help.
Okay, let's discuss it on our next day off.
He promised. However, I was excluded from this discussion. What I learned there was shocking. When I confronted my husband, Judith sneered triumphantly.
My son's girlfriend is pregnant. We don't need an infertile parasite like you anymore. Please leave.
Fine by me, I retorted, feeling a mix of relief and resentment. A month later, I received an urgent call from my distressed Judith and husband. Let me introduce myself. My name is Patricia Westfield, a 35-year-old insurance agent. My husband, John, is 31. We met 3 years ago and married last year. Initially, I didn't see my younger, handsome husband as a romantic interest, but his relentless pursuit eventually won me over. Our marriage, especially to a younger, good-looking man, was the envy of many. Despite everything, I was happy, or so I thought. I dreamed of having children and buying our own house someday, but reality often has other plans. It all started with a simple statement from my husband, John.
Mom slipped on the stairs and hurt her back,
He said, a shadow of concern in his voice. Is she okay? I asked, feeling a pang of worry.
Yay, she's fine. But she can go to her part-time job now. And with Dad not working either, I'm just wondering what they're going to do.
He replied, his usual cheerfulness dimmed by the situation. Richard had been battling diabetes for years, and last year his condition worsened, leading to a hospital stay. Though he's back home now, he's unable to continue working. Their livelihood had been reliant on Judith's part-time income and their pension. That's concerning, I remarked, feeling a sense of empathy for their plight. Then came the request that would change our lives. John took my hands in his, looking deeply into my eyes, and said,
Would you consider living with my parents?
I had sensed this might be coming, but hearing the words made me hesitate. I had never heard a positive story about living with in-laws. Moreover, Judith always treated me like I was the thief who stole her precious son, making the thought of living together seem almost impossible. Yet, I couldn't refuse John's plea. All right, I agreed reluctantly. His face lit up with a grateful smile, and he hugged me tightly.
Thank you. Marrying you was the best decision I ever made,
He said, his joy infectious. Despite my apprehensions, I couldn't help but smile, reassuring myself that everything would be fine. However, a month into our new living arrangement, I was already regretting my decision.
Patricia, bring the tea quickly, please.
Judith called out. Yes, right away, I responded, trying to hide my frustration. When I presented the tea, Judith criticized.
This tea is too lukewarm. Can't you do anything right?
I'm sorry, I replied, feeling belittled. Despite Judith's back pain supposedly healing, she showed no interest in returning to her part-time job. Instead, she spent her days lounging around the house, pushing all the household chores onto me. To make matters worse, Richard spent his days consumed by gambling at the local casino and frequently pestered me for money. I tried discussing these issues with John.
They're just frustrated because they can't work. Let's try to be understanding,
He would say, dismissing my concerns. I thought maybe it was just the adjustment period, so I tried to be patient. However, even after 3 more months, the situation didn't improve. It only got worse. One evening, when John came home earlier than usual, I finally voiced my distress. I don't think I can continue living like this, I confessed. Managing the household alone, along with my job, was taking a toll on both my mental and physical health. But John, as always, took my hands, looked into my eyes, and pleaded.
Patricia, I know it's hard, but my parents are struggling too. Can you bear with it a little longer, please?
After hugging me and apologizing for leaving again to meet a colleague, he was out the door. Watching him go, I let out a deep sigh. Ever since we moved in with his parents, John was almost always out, either late due to work drinks or absent on weekends. It felt like I was abandoned in this house, even by my husband, my supposed ally. I reminded myself that this was my choice. To make the best of it, I decided to try harder to win over Judith, but my resolve was quickly shattered. While cleaning the living room one day, Judith cornered me.
You're 35, aren't you? What about having kids?
She asked abruptly. We're thinking about it, I replied, trying to hide my discomfort.
Well, you're not getting any younger. You should get pregnant right now.
She demanded, her words striking me like a harsh command. That day passed, but then it became a daily routine. Judith relentlessly pressured me about getting pregnant, repeating it like a curse. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, as John returned home late as usual, I approached him desperately. "Can you ask your mom to stop pressuring me about having a child?" I pleaded.
Why so sudden?
He asked, startled. "She tells me every day to get pregnant. But with all the housework and my job, I can't even think about having a child right now. And you're hardly ever home. When would we even have the time?" I argued, my frustration evident. "I'm at my limit, please," I pleaded, feeling completely exhausted both physically and emotionally. John gently rubbed my back as I broke down in tears. Then, with a brief, mischievous smile, he spoke.
Okay, I'll talk to Mom about it on my next day off.
"Really? And can you ask her to share some of the household chores?" I asked, a flicker of hope in my voice.
About that,
John said, introducing a surprising proposal.
what do you think about building a duplex house?
I was taken aback by the sudden suggestion, but John explained gently.
You know, the problem now is that we're too close to each other. If we live in a duplex, we can separate our living spaces. You know, one family on each floor. That way, we won't have to see each other all the time.
It sounded logical. If we had our own spaces, perhaps Judith would at least take care of her own room. I nodded in agreement, but then remembered the financial implications. But building a duplex must be expensive, right? I asked. John held my hand and looked into my eyes, and I understood what was coming.
I have a favor to ask. Patricia, you have some savings from before we got married, right? Could we use that for the down payment?
Indeed, having never planned to marry, I had saved diligently for my future, amassing 15 million yen. After marriage, our expenses increased, and I hadn't been able to save much, so I'd thought to reserve this money for when we had children. I hesitated to agree immediately, but John insisted he would take out a loan for the rest and promised to work harder. Physically and emotionally drained, I couldn't think straight and ultimately gave in to his persuasion.
Thank you, Patricia. I'll talk to them about it on my day off,
John said with a smile. Despite my apprehensions, I hoped this might lead to a better situation. On the next day off, as promised, John set out to discuss the matter with his parents. He suggested I stay away during the conversation, fearing my presence might provoke Judith. So, I decided to kill time at a nearby cafe. After a while, I checked the time on the cafe's clock. An hour had passed since I left home. Thinking it might be time to hear from John, I reached for my phone, only to realize with a start I had left it at home. Rushing back home with the thought that John might have already tried to contact me, I entered quietly, considering the possibility that their discussion might still be ongoing. To my surprise, I noticed a pair of unfamiliar women's shoes in the entranceway, which struck me as odd, but I quietly proceeded inside. Hearing voices from the living room, I assumed the discussion was still in progress. As I tiptoed towards the stairs to my room, trying not to make a sound, a phrase from the conversation stopped me in my tracks.
Truly, congratulations. I'm so happy for you.
Once we build a house and divorce her, everything will be perfect.
Their words hit me like a sledgehammer. Divorce? Had I heard that right? Hiding nearby, I listened in shock to the unfolding conversation.
It always seemed strange to me. John marrying someone older like that.
It's all about the money. She had a good amount saved up, and if you hold her hand and look into her eyes, she believes anything.
That's why you didn't have kids with her.
I wouldn't want kids with someone with such an unlucky face. But with Jennifer, our kids will definitely be beautiful.
The conversation revealed a horrifying truth that nearly brought me to my knees. It was all a lie. John had married me for my money, was having an affair, and even had a child with another woman. And now, he planned to use my savings to build a house for himself and his mistress. His recent absences were likely visits to her. Containing my rising anger, I quietly retrieved my phone from my room and left the house. My next destination was clear a detective agency. I needed evidence of John's infidelity. The hand that John used to hold was now clenched in fury, and the eyes he used to gaze into were burning with rage. As I walked towards the agency, I vowed revenge against them both. A month had passed since that fateful day of the meeting, and I had gathered enough evidence of the affair. Just as I was contemplating when to confront them, I was called by my husband and in-laws for a discussion. In the living room, I found a pile of custom home magazines on the table.
We were thinking it's time to discuss building our new house.
They said cheerfully, picking out their dream homes. I looked at them with icy detachment and stated flatly, I'm not building any house. My husband was visibly shocked, and Judith instantly became irate.
What are you talking about?
She snapped. I said, I am not building a house. I reiterated firmly. My husband, confused and startled, was about to protest when I slammed the evidence of his affair on the table. I know about your affair. Jennifer, right? She's already in her second trimester, I declared. The color drained from his face, but Judith scoffed and yelled at me.
Well, if you know, then it's easier. John's girlfriend is pregnant. You infertile parasite, get out.
Mother, wait.
John started, but I cut him off, loudly. I'll leave. I handed him the divorce papers I had signed. Sign these now. I will submit them to the registry office. John hesitated, pale-faced, muttering about losing the money. But Judith pushed him.
No worries, we'll manage with your income. Sign it now. We don't want to see this parasite's face anymore.
Resigned, John signed the papers. I took them, grabbed my pre-packed bags, and left the house. I immediately went to the registry office and submitted the divorce papers, gaining my freedom. A month later, my ex-husband called me repeatedly. Reluctantly, I answered, only to be greeted by my furious former Judith.
What's the meaning of this?
She shouted. What are you talking about? I asked calmly.
We have no money.
She exclaimed. I sighed, unable to hold it back.
John only earns 170,000 yen. We can't even pay for utilities and phone bills.
That made sense, as I had been the one supporting their household. John had contributed only 50,000 yen for living expenses, assuming his parents' home would cover the rest. Judith used her pension for personal entertainment and never contributed financially, leaving me to shoulder the expenses alone. Even my salary wasn't enough, and we had been using our savings to get by. When I explained this, she screamed even louder.
Why is John's salary so low? He works for a major automotive company.
No, he works as a factory staff for an auto parts manufacturer. I corrected her. Her dumbfounded voice rang through the phone. Apparently, John had lied about his job and income. That's why she had been so confident in kicking me out.
I'm sorry, please come back. Richard gambled away the house as collateral for a loan, and now we might be kicked out.
My former Judith pleaded over the phone. I was stunned to learn that Richard had resorted to gambling away everything after losing access to my funds. Apparently, all the money was gone.
Use your savings to pay off the debts.
She demanded. That was the last straw for me. Don't be ridiculous. After you unilaterally kicked me out, you expect me to bail you out? I retorted, raising my voice for the first time.
Patricia, please help us. We're going to be homeless.
My ex-husband, now on the phone, pleaded in a sweet tone, but it only made me feel nauseous. Enough. It's not my problem anymore what happens to you, I said firmly.
But, wait. The property division should give me half of your money.
He argued desperately. Sorry, but the money I have was saved before we got married. It's not part of the property division, I informed him. The call ended with them still protesting. I informed them that they would soon receive a demand for alimony, 3 million yen from my ex-husband and 1.5 million yen from his mistress. The mistress's parents paid off her debt immediately, but my ex-husband agreed to a payment plan. Later, I heard from neighbors that they couldn't repay the debts and lost the house. Now, the three of them were living in an internet cafe. My former Judith had resumed working part-time, but whatever she earned, along with her pension, was gambled away by Richard. This led to a huge commotion in the internet cafe, involving the police. My ex-husband, unable to remarry due to opposition from the mistress's parents and burdened with the care of his problematic parents, ended up with a stress-induced ulcer. As for me, I moved back to my parents' house for a while after leaving my in-laws' home. Eventually, I found a great place and moved out, embracing a future that was vastly different from what I had envisioned. Now, I am enjoying living alone and looking forward to living my life on my own terms.